But with that, I do want to call upon John Henry, who is an absolute superstar and puts almost everyone to shame, but I will let him tell his own story.
Hey.
John, welcome.
Thanks for having me. So let me just get a sense of the crowd here. First time, all right, let me take a step back. Aspiring founders, want to start but haven't started, but want to do something like entrepreneurial. And her friends like, okay?
For sure.
First time founder, already started and first crack at it. Awesome. And then everyone else, let me get a sense. If you're not in those two buckets, over here, what's your deal? Are you looking to learn? Awesome, yeah. Anyway, the reason I poll is to get a sense, not only for the benefit of the attendees, but also I would come to these early, and these were so important to my early development to both know what I wanted to lean into and also know what I didn't want to lean into. So anyhow, yeah, my story is well documented, it's out there. I think the most important thing is coming from an immigrant family that really shaped how I came up, how I grew up. And it put a chip on my shoulder, pretty much. We were always the broketiest broke of everyone around. And when growing up in the Heights, uptown, not a big deal. When we moved to Florida, all of a sudden it was like, it was palpable. Like, oh, okay, cool. This is what it's like to come up in an immigrant, broke family. And anyway, that pressure early on, you could say was prohibitive to one's growth, but later on, you realize that it actually helps shape who you are, your perspective. There's this interesting quote, it's like a tale, where there's two fish swimming in the water, and like a third fish comes up and he says to the two fish, hey, how's the water, boys? And then he swims away, and the two fish are like, what's water? And that parable is really, really interesting because they draw similarities to the immigrant experience where you're coming in to an environment where you're like, whoo, like, all right, like there's a lot of opportunity here. There's a lot of opportunity for upward mobility, right? And by the way, if we're in this room right now, like this is one of the most important cities in the world, certainly the financial capital, the real estate capital. I like it way more than Silicon Valley because there's media, tech, there's finance, it's the convergence of all these industries. And it's really hard to be upwardly mobile if you're busting your ass, but you're in Mobile, Alabama, let's say. Like, we have to take into consideration the fact that we're in a great city. And so anyway, I came back after high school with a great attitude and found myself working as a doorman, which was a great job because opening up doors for people helped open up doors for me. And then one of the residents was like, hey, you're just too smart to be behind the desk. Like, let me put you on. And that was my first mentor, and my first business was a dry cleaner. And we started dry cleaning the clothes for film and TV productions. And we did that, flipped the business, sold it, and since then I've been doing a bunch of other stuff.
So you hustled for 2 years when you were starting this business and you sold this business. I want to ask a flip question to that because everyone says, oh, how do you hustle so hard? When is the right time to stop hustling? When do you realize, okay, you should quit, this is not going to work?
There's so many ways you can take that question. For me, it really just comes to what's your roadmap? Like everyone, as long as you're following what you feel your own personal roadmap is, then good for you. Like me, I personally want to build generational wealth in my communities. So you tell me when that hustle is gonna end. Never, right? Like I'm here to equalize that playing field. Right, like someone read a stat and said, yo, in 2050, like the average net worth of a African-American person is gonna be net negative. I said, they didn't ask me. Like, where the fuck did they get that stat? Because they didn't ask me. And so like, I'm on a mission. And for me, like there's just, I wake up and I'm energized to do the work. And by the way, energized doesn't necessarily mean in a great mood all the time. right? Like that's the strangeness of it. Because Instagram is such a visual medium, you see, if you type in hashtag entrepreneur right now, like right now, you're gonna see someone doing this in front of a Lambo, in front of a mansion, with like drone shots, chilling in the pool. Like, that's not what that shit's like. Melissa will tell you, right? Like, it's not what it's like. And so, you know, but what does Drake say in God's Plan? He says, I feel good, sometimes I don't. You know, like, it's just a reality. Like, sometimes you won't feel good. And so for me, motivation is way fucking overrated. It's all about, hey, can you do the work when you're not motivated? Can you find one thing that's gonna be your North Star, that's gonna enable you to do the work when you're not motivated? Because for me, 99.9% of things, if I get punched in the face, I'm tapping out. I'm like, yo, I'm good. But the one thing that I will absolutely never tap out for is my mission, which is to build wealth for myself and my communities. So you gotta find that for you. And then you can reverse engineer how much hustle you gotta have.
So on the topic of building generational wealth, you mentioned that you realized when I think you were in a car with some real estate big shot, you realized that
yeah, you did your homework.
it's actually about the mindset.
Yeah.
Mindset needs to change. Tell us about this mindset.
Totally. I had the great fortune going to, this is why I believe so strongly in going to these things. Going to one of these things years ago, I went to go see David Rose speak. David Rose is like a prolific angel, probably the most active angel in New York City. He's got like 130 plus companies in his personal portfolio, which is a lot. He's like the godfather of tech, like anyone in the 70s, 80s, 90s. He's also the founder and CEO of Gus, which is the largest investment platform in the world. By the way, this meetup was a Jewish meetup. So I RSVP'd as John Goldstein. Like, I made up a name and showed up and like did what I had to do to get in front of David and like meet him. And I got his email, that's all I needed. And then I launched something similar to this uptown and incubated. This is years ago. I cold emailed David. He's like, great, this sounds awesome, I'll come. And he attended. He ended up being a supporter. Later on, he would end up sponsoring, co-found Harlem. And after a while, I said, John, what you're doing here on the non-for-profit basis is great, but why don't you cross over to the for-profit side? He says, you announced you're gonna raise a fund. I said, yes. He said, this shit's hard, isn't it? I said, super hard. He said, come with us. We have the money raised. We're gonna invest at the intersection of real estate and technology. I said, Dave, I don't know real estate. He says, John, we know real estate. They're a multi-generational real estate dynasty family. In New York, there are only 5 or 6 of them, of these specific to New York, these families, Rudins, Lauders, Tisches, Pritzkers, Roses. And they each have their specialty in different areas, retail, commercial. Rose happened to be multifamily. And anyway, long story is, just to give you guys context, I all of a sudden at 23 years old, coming from fucking Section 8, growing up in Uptown Manhattan, now all of a sudden, right hand to a real estate dynasty family that controls 62,000 apartments in the most important city in the world. And like, I couldn't help but to stay late at night in the office and look out in the window. I had a corner office here on 55 Broad and be like, why is this in my path? Like, what am I supposed to make of this? And the most important lesson that I drew from it had nothing to do with the job itself, which was all around learning how to deploy capital, which has been very useful, and now I run my own fund. But the most important thing was this idea of generational wealth. This idea that the Jewish community has done incredibly positive things within their community. They have wonderful values, this long-term, this camaraderie, this brotherhood, this on Friday, turn the phone off, we're here together. I saw so many things that resonate with me as a person. And that's when I realized, like, to your story, when we were driving down Fifth Ave, it wasn't sightseeing that they were doing. It was like, how's this performing? How is that performing? And I realized that's not present in our communities. It's just not present. Like, I saw this interview where Kanye said, if you don't have land, you settle for brands. And that, you laugh. But growing up in the Heights, step on someone's sneakers, what happens? It was all about the Pele Pele, it was all about the this, it was all the Timbs. If you don't have lands, you settle for brands. Because it's all about how something looks now. And so, right when I got it, I went back uptown, and that's when we started Harlem Capital, and we've been busy ever since. And I get heated up. I get fired up when I talk about that, if you guys can't tell, because something that I care really, really deeply about.
So outside of Harlem Capital, which is the VC you're part of, and co-found Harlem, which is the nonprofit that you started.
Yes.
How are you spreading this message to the community outside these two?
Well, so there was an interesting dialogue earlier around media, and media is so incredibly important, right? From my observation, I think that there are 4 pillars of power in the nation, right? There's Wall Street, right here in New York, literally a block away, right? There's Wall Street, there's DC, moves policy, there's Silicon Valley, representative of tech, and there's media in LA. And media shapes our aspirations, what we think is normal for us. It shapes who we think we can even have the opportunity to grow into. It shapes so many things, and I really didn't grasp the power until I was coming up, and I realized like, yo, I was one of the few. Now entrepreneurship is more in the zeitgeist, but before it wasn't. And anyway, to answer your question, you said, hey, how are you impacting, how are you furthering your mission? Media is a really big part. And so from 2014, my brother and I have been creating content. Content. The answer to everything is more content. We have this joke, just content. I put out a lot of content and I'm still not putting out enough content. If you are in the audience and you want to grow your brand, content. If a lot of you guys who may follow me, or maybe after this we'll connect online, like you'll hit me up and you'll have questions, I'll just tap on your profile and just see, I'll just scroll back. And if I do one scroll and it's already 3 years ago, it's not enough content. Like, so why? Because when you put content out, you allow people to develop an opinion around who you are and your values, and you can develop an emotional connection with a brand or an individual over time. And the biggest shift in media over the last 10 years, but more specifically over the last 5, and especially over the last 1, is that it's democratized. Like, we started with a Canon T6i. I got this shit for, it was like $600. It was on a Black Friday, and we just started vlogging, and the first vlog was terrible, and everything we did at first was terrible, but we just put in the reps. You put in the reps. You wanna know how you get healthier? You work out more, and you eat cleaner. You wanna lose more weight? Work out even more, and eat even cleaner. And so anyway, with these reps, what started happening was the audience response. At first, it was just like to put cool content out, and then we started getting people say, hey, I didn't know that you could be young and black and be in investments, and that has grown. That grew into Gimlet Media reached out and they offered me the opportunity to be their first ever branded podcast host that they did for eBay. That grew to Washington Post, and then that matured into VICELAND, where I'm at now. So media has played a very, very big part in furthering this mission of changing the narrative on what successful people can look like.
I'll debate you a little bit on the content and media.
Let's go back and forth. I'm ready.
I mean, I'm of the belief, I agree with you, and I think your story is very unique and different. But I think what more content has done nowadays it's made people almost forget who they are. You keep looking at 100 different profiles, this one story, you forget what your own story and your own mission is. So, I mean, this is probably not related to the content you put out, but how do you ethically, I guess, deal with that? Or how do you tell people that, look, this is my story, but at the same time, you have your individual mission and don't forget that? Yeah,
I think that was going on even before then. There's always going to be people that are looking to find their identity, and I will give your claim merits. Most definitely, there's downside, but the amount of upside that there is in this whole new realm, it's childish to even think that. The fact that we're all interconnected. I did a live stream and someone from Nigeria jumped on my live and was like, yo, dude, holy shit, I can consume your content, it's giving me ideas, I'm starting things here in Nigeria. And then he hung up, and then someone from Australia, and then we're connected, man. And yeah, you can sit on your ass and consume it lazily if you want, or you can mobilize and recognize that this is the opportunity of a generation and build on top of it. And that's what I've decided to do. And I think that if you're in this room, you're considering, you're looking for ways that you can do the same thing in your own respective, regard, whether it's wellness, she had the vision to do the same thing, and you take advantage of the infrastructure that's there before you, right? Amazon could only exist because UPS and FedEx already existed. right? And so they built on top. Now they're a layer, AWS. By the way, Netflix, Snapchat, entire publicly traded companies run on Amazon, cloud service, right? And so now there's Facebook, and now I'm building on top. So that's all we can do is just build on top.
Okay, so on the topic of content, you have your new TV show,
That's right.
that just premiered in Feb 10. Tell us about it.
Yeah, it's a cool show. I'm gonna treat this less like a plug for my show and more like, wow, I'm really now stepping into the power of our narratives, right? Like, it's not lost on me that I'm in the middle of a multi-million-dollar production that VICELAND is putting up, that Cadillac is co-producing, that Alicia Keys is an executive producer, Marcus Samuelson, there's a production company, we have billboards and all this stuff, and I'm just looking and like, man, I come from the hood, so like, what's going on here? And it's so similar to like hip hop, right? Like, hip hop is cool now, like it's fun to do yoga and hip hop now, and it's like now worked its way into like all these regimens, but like, hip hop gave a voice to communities that were never meant to have a voice. It was the most marginalized communities fucking ever. And so like, it's this really strange dichotomy where the things before that were not valued are now sitting at the forefront of culture. And like, credit to VICELAND, like they peeped it and they were like, hey, we've been wanting to tell a story in business, but we didn't want to do Silicon Valley. Like that shit's boring. We felt like there was a more authentic package here, and like when we saw you, we knew we wanted to do something, so we incubated the deal together with Beth Greenwald, who's one of the creators. She did Pimp My Ride. Anyway, it's been a 3-year journey is what I'm trying to say. 3 years. So if you're working on something big and it hasn't popped off, the bigger the thing that you're going for, the longer you should expect it to take. But the more impact you can have, my friends. Trends, they call them trends for a reason. They come and go. Anything foundational takes time. And I'm so glad that I never threw in the towel. And there was a time where I was like, Beth, I'm done. And she's like, John, stay with me, stay with me. And there were times where she was fed up and I was like, yo, Beth, stay with me. And we went through this back and forth. And this, and then Vice bought the pilot. And after we delivered the pilot, they had 4 months to decide if they were gonna pick up the series. I'm talking, it was a fucking Hail Mary because the 4 months was up. And we lunged, boom, and he tipped it, and then, boom, we caught it in the end zone. We won the game. In that, they bought the series. So we filmed it, we're on air now. It's Sundays at 9 p.m. on VICELAND. The show is called Hustle, and it's a very authentic look at entrepreneurship. Because when I was coming up, I would see companies raise all different kinds of money, and I'd be like, holy shit, what am I doing wrong? And as I went on, I realized, most people's entrepreneurial journey and cadence actually looks far more similar to what I experienced than what Fast Company writes about. And so we created this show and we brought it to market, and every episode we work with a founder, we help them take their business to the next level, and I was really passionate about it not being just tech. In fact, there's no tech. We've done a jam maker. Up next this Sunday is a Cousin's Dozen. He's a mini donut company, the Donutologist. Shout out Todd. We worked with 2 women who created the first oils for pubic hair called Fur. We've done 3D printing, manufacturing, apparel. Like, we're really showing that this thing could look a whole different kind of ways.
I love that, because there's all this talk about these flashy tech companies. I love what you're doing. So you've tweeted, and clearly your mindset, very obvious, is that doubt is more expensive than failure.
Yeah.
And you're influencing a lot of people. Who are your biggest influencers?
Yeah, I used to answer this question very differently because influences implies like, who do you look up to? But I kind of stopped doing that. Like now I look around to my peers. Like I realized like, all right, the greats, they didn't came in like, yeah, they blazed a trail. If we can see furthest because we stand on their shoulders. But at some point, I started looking to my peers and being like, yo, we're in this shit now. Like, yeah, there might be, Hove or Gary. Like, there's a bunch of greats in their respective fields, but they've never done this shit now, right? Like, we're all trying to come up in this moment. And so I'm drawing a lot of influence and admiration and respect from my peers because it's really hard to stay consistent. And by the way, when I was first coming to these events 8 years ago, like, a lot of people drop out. A lot of people tap out. And so you end up having an even deeper respect for the people that stay consistent over years. And now I'm looking around like a lot of these cats that are popping in New York City are my homies, and it feels so great to like support each other and uplift each other. Like Jason Saltzman, who's CEO at Alley, which is a great workspace, or like Ryan, who makes the shoes that I rock. Like, I feel like entrepreneurship now, everything I sport, I rock, I wear is like, it's all my friends from, having stayed consistent from way back in the day. So anyway, I draw respect and influence from my peers.
Okay, that is wonderful. So finally, what is your vision going forward?
I don't know. I mean, I think what I'm doing now is working, so I'm not trying to change too much shit up. I'm just trying to execute on what's right before me. I think in 12 to 18 month periods, that's about as far as I feel I need to see. It's like, I know what I want to do 40 years from now, and I know what I want to do 12 to 18 months from now, and everything else in between, I don't really care.
What is the 4 years out vision?
4 years? I don't know, but...
Oh, I thought you said you know.
Oh, 40. Yeah, 40. Yeah, that's right. I'm 26 now. Like, I'm pumped to be 66. Like, Warren Buffett made all his money in his 60s, right? Like, that's when you're really, really gonna know yourself, and you're gonna have the access to credit, capital, network, resources, like everything. So I'm just setting myself up, like, I used to overestimate what I could do in a year, and now I realize there are so many things that I want to do, and I feel like this strange, I don't know if you guys feel this, I feel this strange pressure of like this time pressure, like, I gotta do it now, like, but then you realize, you have time, bro. Like, just do, some meaningful things every year, and when you look back, before you know it, you are where you wanted to be, and then it becomes not even about where you wanted to be, it just becomes about like, the whole path. And that was a fucking cliche ass Instagram meme by the way, hit me up on Instagram, guys. I'm at John Henry. If you type in John Henry, you'll find me. I respond to every DM, comment, like, for real. I responded to 728 comments on the VICELAND video for episode 1 that dropped. Like, name another TV host that's doing that. I'll wait, right? So, yeah.
All right, so on that note, audience questions. Back there first.
How you doing?
Hey, brother.
Good. So for your journey from an entrepreneur, and people were showing you, guiding you to your to where you're at now, did they ever show you how to deal with fear of failure? Did they ever like, can you give some tips on how they view failure from their point of view versus the point of view of a person that's coming from nothing versus having everything?
Yeah, that's a great question. The line that comes to me was right before I was planning to quit my job to start my very first thing. I told my mentor at the time, I was like, I'm fucking scared. I think I'm scared. Like, I was trying to put a finger on it. I was like, yeah, I'm terrified. And he's like, dude, if you're not terrified, you're either crazy or you're dumb, and you're neither. So relax. It's all part of it. And then over time for me, fear has become a familiar friend. Never goes away. You just get more comfortable with it. And so, like, for me, I use fear as an indication of like how worthwhile of a pursuit am I going for? Because if I started another dry cleaner, let's say, that was 8 years ago now for me, but if I started one right, I wouldn't be scared. I know exactly what to do. I'll do it well. Incubator, same thing. But like vlog, same thing. But anytime you're doing something new, the fear will be there. And so over time, I've just learned to get more comfortable with it. And I think shifting my understanding from, it's not that I have to overcome it, it's just that I have to learn to direct it, that shifted my understanding of fear.
Yeah.
What's going on, John?
Hey, what's up, brother?
Rami,
Good.
nice to meet you.
Rami, what up?
So you're suggesting that everyone kind of posts more content. So let's say average person in this room posts like 6 to 8 times every couple of months. And let's say every single person in this room goes from 6 to 8 every couple of months to like 60, 80, 90,
Love
100.
it. Yep.
But what are we doing now that the market has become competitive? So how does someone who's entering that space, how can I kind of stand above an oversaturated market?
The reality is that even though this is probably one of the most, let's say, dedicated rooms in New York City, just given the nature of the event and that we're here, even in this room, 95% of people in here will not execute. They have the fucking information. Like, prove me wrong. By the way, I want to be wrong. Prove me wrong. I want everyone in here to fucking execute and say, now what? And I'll be like, all right, damn, you guys prove me wrong. But like, from my experience, like the reality is that most people will not execute consistently over time. They might for like a couple weeks, but it's hard. It's really hard. I know it's hard and it's expensive and it takes time and it's like this push and pull between like, okay, I got a business I got to run. How do I then also balance the content? And then it takes time, dude. It takes time. Interns are a great way. So that's my answer. It's like, okay, one, just know that if you're executing consistently, you're already in the creme. And then two, I really leaned into, like, when I first started doing like quote cards, if you look at my Instagram, there's like little quote cards and shit. Like I was running out of stuff to say and I was feeling the pressure and I was like coming up, and then I let that go and I just said, dude, I'm okay with the fact that I only have like 10 basic truths pretty much. And that's all I live pretty much over and over. And so when I leaned more into like my own lane, drowned out the noise and got over this fear of like putting out stuff and then you wait for the feedback and people's comments at first used to fuck with my head, but now I just don't care. Like, and by the way, speed really helps. Speed helps you be less precious about the content that you post. Because if you only put out one a month, yeah, you're gonna be like, okay, this thing better do really well. But I put out content and 2 hours again, 3 hours again, and so on and so forth.
So do you suggest ads?
Ads?
Yeah.
I never monetize my content personally. Like I'm putting all this shit out there for free because Netflix is spending $6 billion on original content this year. There's so many companies creating great content that I put it out for free because it to me feels silly to like compete toe-to-toe on the value proposition of content because that's a losing value proposition, in my opinion. And I just put it out and I build the brand and I monetize elsewhere.
I meant campaigns for reach.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm a big fan of that. Yes, put paid spend behind your content. The reality is that organic reach is dead or dying on a lot of platforms. And the platform right now that has the #1 like organic reach that people sleep on is LinkedIn. I get incredible response on LinkedIn. In fact, I get 4 to 5x the organic reach on LinkedIn than I do Instagram. So, in an environment where you don't get a lot of organic reach, like I would put whatever you feel comfortable putting behind that post. Sometimes I put $5. If it does really well, I'll put $20. Sometimes I'll put nothing. So I'm a really big fan of like just throwing a little, because it's not about what the post does, it's about you learning the programs. It's very valuable to learn the back-end analytics of these kinds of platforms. Absolutely.
Would you, so you talk a lot about content and putting content out. Do you ever sacrifice quality of that content just to put more content out?
Most definitely.
Okay.
Most definitely. Like sometimes my brother will send me a video and I'll know that it could be incrementally better. Like I know I could change the headline. I know that if I leave that out, it might editorially kind of fit better with the message. Like I'm painfully seeing where it could be better, but I know that like a plus or minus 2% difference isn't as valuable as just putting it out there, gaining the response. And for me, the most important thing is the comments, right? Because the comments will help steer you and where you're gonna go next. And so, yeah, and it's something that I still deal with, but as long as it's not egregious, like as long as like 80% there, I'm okay putting it out. And I will sacrifice the quality for the quantity because quantity leads to quality. Because the reps, you get much better over time. We're so much better than we were 3 years ago. Of course. I'll let you take it.
Hey man, I have a question.
Shoot.
Have you taken any interest in the food space?
Yes. Yes. Some of the earliest bets that I made were in food, but we haven't taken a meaningful look back at it. And I wouldn't do food in retail. I would do kind of consumer products. It's tough, man. It's a tough business.
I've been in it for 10 10 years, I know.
It's tough, but I do like the food environment. Such a big market. I'm waiting for the right niche in the food industry that feels right to me.
Then we should talk.
Great. Then I love to talk. Hustle.
What industry is hot right now, and what are you most interested in investing?
That's a great question. I really like the enterprise environment. B2B companies are actually statistically proven to thrive in market corrections because when budgets dry up, big companies have to be more efficient. And so we're gonna see them leaning into machine learning, artificial intelligence, voice, all that kind of stuff. So that is an interesting space for me. But let's get real too, like femtech is very interesting to me. One of our most recent investments is a company called Entflow. She makes organic tampons. She is on a mission to increase access to menstrual products everywhere. And it's really fascinating because the regulatory environment was pushing corporates to stock tampons, and so she meets that need. She has big enterprise clients with WeWork and others where she sells in bulk and her contracts are valuable. So like femtech, because as a whole, I do think like the climate is moving in that direction. So I love that space. I also am paying attention to the elderly space. You know, we had a record amount of baby boomers that are now moving into kind of senior living, and like what kinds of solutions can we provide there? There's a shortage of housing, there's a shortage of like modern transport, you know, so I just look on a whole for like those like areas, but enterprise, femtech, and senior is interesting to me.
One last question.
Oh, we'll do them both if we do them quick. Okay, all right. Okay.
So I know you're committed to funding diverse founders. Are there any distinct challenges that diverse founders have or that you've seen in moving in certain spaces, and what are your thoughts on that?
That's an excellent question that I've not yet been asked. And interestingly enough, diverse founders, Black, Latino, women will consistently undervalue their companies. Consistently. We see something like 500 deals a year. Last year we saw 378 deals year to date, and it's just continuing to go up. And so we have our internal data points, and we're seeing that if you have a Latino founder, a Black founder, or a woman founder that's making the same amount of revenue as like their white male counterpart, like diverse founders will consistently undervalue their companies, which is interesting because I think it speaks to like an instilled sense of like, all right, let's go for less. Whereas folks that come from maybe Silicon Valley culture are swinging big, boys, swinging for the fences. So we'll see how that plays out because I think there's room to go up, but the interesting thing is when you raise at really high valuations, then you have to raise later at a down round and then you're screwed. Versus like, I think women have a phenomenal ability to be prudent and reasonable and say, we don't need to raise a $20 million valuation our seed round. You know, let's raise at, you know, a $6 million valuation, making $750K in revenue, and let's grow this business. And let's get to a point where we have more leverage and we don't need to give more away. Great question, man. Thank you. Last one over here.
Hi, I've been in business for 3 years with my cupcakes, and I've been on a couple shows. And when I go to meetings, as you just said, that's my problem. They're expecting a certain person.
Mm-hmm.
When they see me, I'm tatted, I'm short, chunky. They don't. A woman asked me before, "Oh, do you own the company? I'm waiting for the boss."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, "I am the boss."
Right.
She's like, no, not the woman that's on the TV shows, the boss. And I'm
Right.
like, it makes you want to get out of character and
Right.
you get crazy because you're like,
Uh-huh.
I am the boss. Like, what are you talking about?
Makes you want to be like, listen here, okay?
The woman, her secretary pulled me aside the day and said, "You won't get the contract." And I said, it was from a big hotel. And I said, "Why wouldn't I get the contract?" And she said, "Because you don't look like us." I took off my earrings. I know, come here. And I started crying in front of them because I'm like, really? But I get that now. If I'm, no disrespect, what I'm about to say. If I'm long hair, 100 pounds, they'll look at you more than if you're, let's keep it real.
Totally.
How I look. Like, you know what I mean?
I got you.
I don't mean to say it like that, but it's just
No, I hear you, and I can say we at Harlem Capital have funded research internally to take a look at this, and the data, supports that, right? Like, subconscious bias exists. What I don't believe, because I'm an optimist, like, I really don't believe that people kind of sit around and like plot at keeping people out. I've discovered it's more so like people just do what they know. And like the reality is that the whole reason we started Harlem Capital, if you think there's a small percentage of diverse funded founders, take a look at investors. Like, if you think the venture-backed founders are scarcely diverse, imagine investors. It's a very old white male environment. And so, you'll invest in people from your networks. You even get deal flow from just people from your networks, and it just gets perpetuated. And so I think the shift needs to be, and why we exist, is because if you walk in the room to pitch me, I intrinsically understand where you come from. I get, what I'm saying? Like, it's not off-putting to me. I actually lean into it because I know you're going to be able to create something for your communities better than someone from outside. And so I believe that, A. And then B, yes, the data suggests it, right? Like 89% of VCs are male, and something like 90% of venture-funded founders are also male. It's like same thing on the race side. So it's race and gender almost tit for tat. They're matched up. And the only solution is to get more diverse fund managers in the ecosystem. It's the solution. And I feel good about where we're sitting, because we're sitting right as the zeitgeist is changing, which is always where I like to be. And you, my friend, might have lost that account, but like, you not getting that account, like, that's the reason, like, we're gonna make a lot of money together is what I'm trying to say, right? Because when someone is sleeping on people that they maybe intrinsically don't understand, by the time they realize it, like, women, minorities, like, we'll have created the companies of the future, and the investors that took a chance on you guys will be the ones that will capture the upside.
No, it's true. It's true.
Thank you for that rapid fire round.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
So one solution is obviously having more diversity, but do you have any advice for how we should deal with our subconscious biases?
No, I mean, just get more people around you who look different and come from different backgrounds. Like, by the way, all my partners, like, we're, young and of color, but like, we're all very different. I'm the only one who's like a scrappy founder. One of us comes from like a wealthier background who grew up playing golf. And like, one kid grew up in Cleveland with a single mom, the other one in Philly. Like, diversity of thought, even having a lot of women on our team has really made our team much, much stronger. So just get around different, and you won't have an issue with that in New York City, let's be honest, right?
Your biggest failure?
My biggest failure was blowing the bulk of my bread after my exit instead of having the maturity to put it to work.
Okay. So you're also a big thinker. When do you carve time, and do you have a process where some time of the day, or what's your thinking process?
For off time?
Yeah.
Well, at the turn of the year for my birthday, I went to Miami. I wore exclusively linens only. I crossed my legs frequently, grabbed a cigar, some Japanese whiskey, and the paper, and I just kicked back, and I like to put myself in a place to envision. I like to put myself in surroundings that inspire me and say, I'm gonna own this shit one day, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. Like, that is my way of bringing like sanity to me. Like, I like to just put myself in that place now so I can catch up.
So you were the first company entrepreneur.
That's right. If you would have snapped a photo in that moment, it would have been a Fast Company ad. Just doing this.
So what can Brunchwork do for you?
Guys, I just would love to connect with each and every one of you. I derive a great amount of joy from that. So if you guys could connect with me on the gram, I'll hit you guys all back. I'd love to be accessible to you guys, but also vice versa. You know, let's make this a dialogue. You know, you never know who you meet through these things, and my hope is that we're connected years to come.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.